I want to talk this evening about this overpopulation that we're hearing everywhere. We're hearing it from Klaus Schwab, we're hearing it from Bill Gates. And do you know what? I'll probably be deemed a conspiracy theorist for sharing my views on it. Is the world overpopulated? Could we not end the current social problems if we stabilized or if we curbed the rate of population growth? And these people would lead you to believe that they could, but that's just a myth. It's just a myth. The myth of overpopulation is an unfounded belief that the number of people on Earth will exceed the carrying capacity of the planet in the foreseeable future, leading to an economic or social collapse, and that actions should be taken right now to curb population growth. And we have many, let's call them population alarmists, who buy into this overpopulation myth, believe that the world is growing so fast that its population will strip the earth of its resources and will outpace innovation and rates of production. And in essence, that this will then cause a diminishing standard of living, more poverty, more hunger. We're hearing it: food shortages, electric shortages, uh, war. We're hearing about starvation, water shortages, pestilence, war and conflict over diminishing resources. That wildlife habitats will be destroyed, and we'll have these environmental catastrophes, global climate change, in other words. So, where did this myth come from? Well, back in 1798, there's an Anglican minister by the name of Thomas Malthus who published his first essay, his first edition of his essay, an essay on the principle of population, where he speculated that under perfect economic conditions, humans reduce exponentially, while their ability to increase agricultural output increases only linear at best. You see, this guy falsely believed that population checks were necessary to prevent the proliferation of poverty and to prevent catastrophic war, famine, epidemics caused by overpopulation. And this became known as the Malthusian catastrophe. He had two checks: a positive check, which is war, famine, and disease; preventative checks, personal moral restraint, abstinence, delaying marriage until one can provide for family. And who read these essays? Well, let's see who went to church in those times. It was just the upper classes in Europe. And many of them who read this bought into this false belief that high birth rates among the poor would overwhelm their Western society and lead to war, famine, and poverty. And of course, when ideas spring up like this, movements begin. And this movement began to preach a population control and contraception as keys to socio-economic development for the betterment of Western society, so it wouldn't affect their lifestyle. So it is a myth. This overpopulation is a myth. It We need to debunk it. It's said that poverty, crime, hunger, pollution, and a host of other evils are due in part to the size of the world's population. But we just talk about these evils so we can justify things like abortion and sterilization. Pollution is a serious problem in the world, and I think we're confusing pollution with overpopulation. We're you know we're confusing calling it climate change when it's just pollution. Um, so it's industrialization, not population, that is the main cause, and it's up to the beneficiaries of the industrial revolution to be good stewards of the planet. When we were all made in the image and likeness of God and we were put on this planet, He said that we were to be good stewards. We were to look after the planet, and we are failing miserably at that. The fact is, although these people like Schwab and Gates talk about overpopulation, they talk about there's a hunger, but it's not the hungry that are a problem. Injustice that is caused by these industrial giants is the problem. The fact is, we're not close to running out of anything. 46% of the world is underdeveloped and nearly unpopulated. If we go back in 2010, the US carried out a census that the world's entire population could fit into the state of Texas. That's the world's population state of Texas. Not only that, they could have a quarter of an acre of land each. So tell me again, how is the world overpopulated? Every person is worth something. Every person is valuable. All lives matter. All lives are valuable. But the overpopulation myth fails to recognize this. They fail to recognize the priceless value of each person who's made who's made eternal in the image and likeness of God, who's a masterpiece, who is unique. So we need to debunk this. We need to debunk this absolute rubbish that the world is overpopulated. We need to this Malthus idea quickly became that foundation for movement that began to preach population control and contraception as the keys to socioeconomic development and the betterment of Western society. And governments today are still pushing population control policies in order to control the number of children being born as protective measure to their national resources. But yet, a recent survey in the last couple of years in China said that their population is declining. But all these government policies have received global recognition of the brutality. If we look at New Zealand, who have just um, have the most liberal, progressive abortion laws probably in the world today. In their country, selective abortion. You want a boy and it's a girl, you can abort it. Cleft lip, Down syndrome. These babies can now all be aborted. And I think these governments pushing them, these policies are just pure evil. These governments have gone up to the top of the mountain, or sorry, have been brought up to the top of the mountain and they've bowed down and they're worshipping the devil. If we look at China's one child policy, where women were severely fined, arrested, or forcibly sterilized for exceeding the birth limit. India's sex selective abortion, which is now in Canada, which is now in New Zealand, and I don't think we're too far away from it in Ireland. It's in Iceland, approximately 15.8 million girls have been eliminated since 1990 due to cultural preference for boys. And now the Indian government wants to impose their own two-child policy. Latin America's forced sterilization programs, where women were arrested for being pregnant and their babies were aborted in unsanitary conditions. The United Nations education programs that refuse aid to developing countries unless they accept abortion and sterilization to prevent the false idea of population of overgrowth. It's a myth. It's an absolute myth. And we as Bible believers know that every life is valuable. Every life has been made in the image and likeness of God, and that we have enough. See, food and raw materials should not be accumulated for the privilege of the few, while many suffer from lack. God intends His world resources to be used by all people, not just by some. The universal destination of goods places an obligation on those who control goods and resources to use them to their highest benefits for the greatest number of people. We need to get out of this overpopulation myth. We as Christians know that the poor are the apples of God's eye and the proper object of our charity. John Paul II said that when he addressed the Third General Conference of Latin American Bishops. We, with the freedom and power to choose, opt for serving the poor in the imitation of Christ. We are called to feed the hungry. We are called to give the thirsty drink. This means that we choose a lower standard of living for the sake of others. Ultimately, the answer to the problem of overpopulation, as well as to all the other problems of the world, is not our world governments, but is the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ. We need to pray for our leaders. We need to pray that they have vision, a godly vision of the world. God bless you till the next time.